Welcome to Storytimer at Large. Jayne Friedt, Daniel Davis, Mark Flemmonds, and Ruth Shelton. Police were called to the restaurant by the morning shift. Earlier, when the employees had arrived, they were shocked to find that the restaurant was unlocked and empty. 2 female employees had left their purses and their coats behind. Closing duties had not been finished. All the money was gone from the safe. All the cash in the registers had been taken except the coins. An empty roll of tape was sitting on top of the safe. None of the young employees who closed on November 17, 1978 could be reached by phone. The local police concluded that the staff had just taken the money and skipped out. They weren't worried about it. They took no photos. They did not dust for fingerprints. The police said that the crew probably bought booze with the money and just went out and partied. They instructed the opening staff to just go ahead and clean up, and they'd talk to those thieving kids later. The opening staff protested that something was very, very wrong. The local police dismissed their concerns. The staff set about cleaning up and getting the place ready for the Saturday customers. The staff of Burger Chef in Speedway, Indiana, were still puzzling over what had happened with the closing staff on Friday night when word came in on Sunday that the missing staff had been located. All 4 were found dead in Johnson County, south of Speedway and Indianapolis. Jayne Friedt was 20. She was a dedicated employee and a solid person. She's on the upper left-hand corner. Her car had been found in town, but there was no call from Jayne. When the 4 Burger Chef workers were found, it suddenly made some sort of sense. Jayne would have called if she had been able. Jayne Friedt was stabbed in the chest. The knife had broken off and the handle was missing, but the blade was found upon autopsy in her chest. Daniel Davis was 16. He's on the lower left-hand side. He had been shot multiple times with a .38 caliber weapon. Mark Flemmonds was also 16. He's on the upper right-hand side. He had been bludgeoned severely and was unconscious when he drowned in his own blood. Ruth Shelton was 17. She's on the lower right hand. She had been shot also multiple times with a .38 caliber weapon. All 4 of them were still wearing their brown and orange Burger Chef uniforms. Some still had their watches on. They still had their own money in their pockets. If the thieves just wanted money, why had they not taken those items? Why had they not taken the almost $100 in coins from the registers? Why take the staff at all? Why take them all the way out to Johnson County just to murder all 4? Was this a disgruntled former employee who wanted revenge? Was this someone who had a personal reason against one of the staff? Did one of the staff maybe recognize one of the robbers? In November of 1978, when the Burger Chef murders happened, I had just turned 9. Sometime after the murders, my sister and I were invited to go roller skating with friends. After roller skating our socks off to the Grease soundtrack, Donna Summer, and other big disco hits of the era, we headed home. On the way home, I saw a Burger Chef sign and commented on how good the food would be. Another kid in the car brought up that we shouldn't eat there because of the recent murders. We weren't going out to eat anyway, but I asked about the murders. What do you mean? Our friend's mom asked us not to talk about that it wasn't nice to talk about. I still didn't really know about the murders. I just sort of associated Burger Chef with this terrible thing. For a long time, I thought the crime took place there in southern Indiana at the restaurant that I had seen. And I was an adult before I learned it had taken place up in Speedway, Indiana. Speedway, Indiana is literally the home of the Speedway. The Indiana 500 takes place there each May. All the month of May is taken up with events leading up to race day on Memorial Day weekend. I was thrilled to get to 10 Bar there all of May in 2022. It was very fun. November in 1978 in Speedway should have been rather quiet. It should have just been business as usual. Everyone in Speedway was a bit rattled because someone kept setting off bombs that fall. To my knowledge, the bomber was never caught. The Speedway police chief later admitted that they had botched the Burger Chef investigation. It is now nearly impossible to say who committed the Burger Chef murders, but there is a chief suspect or two. There's one suspect who many consider to be the ringleader. Donald Forrester had a long criminal history. He was in and out of jail for many offenses. He robbed restaurants, including other Burger Chef locations. He also lived across the street from the Speedway Burger Chef. That fact increased the likelihood that the restaurant staff was murdered because they might have recognized him. Donald Forrester was well known to police. He was convicted of rape many times, including against female members of his own family. Sadly, rape was not considered a serious crime or a violent crime by the men who made all the laws in the 1970s. Donald Forrester would eventually be given a life sentence for the brutal rape and attempted murder of a victim in 1979. On that April 1st, 1979, the victim had gone out to a club that evening and ran into an old friend. The two left the club and went to Denny's on East 82nd Street to talk and catch up on each other's lives. That Denny's is still there, and I have been to it many times, and it is still a delicious place to eat late at night. After chatting for a good long while, the two of them, they each headed home. The victim then noticed that a car was following her. She made several turns and even ran a red light to see if it was really following her. It was. She didn't want to lead them to her own home, so she did some things to try to throw them off. She turned into a residential neighborhood. She ran a red light. She tried speeding up and slowing down. She got into this neighborhood in Noblesville, Indiana, and pulled over, thinking that they would just pass her by. The car instead blocked her in. Two men were in the car. Donald Forrester tried to convince her that they knew each other and even showed her his driver's license. She insisted that they did not know one another. He then pulled a gun and forced her at gunpoint into the back seat. Donald instructed his cousin, Dale Dawson, to drive the victim's car. Donald Forrester then raped the victim in the back seat as the car was moving. He told his cousin to go to a field somewhere. The victim realized then that they were going to kill her, and there was no way out at this point, so she became desperate. Dale Dawson got lost somewhere along the way. As they approached a rural field, Dale hit the brakes suddenly for an animal. It's ironic that they're getting ready to kill this girl, but he hits the brakes because he doesn't want to kill this animal. But as that happened, as he braked, the victim was able to reach the door handle and opened the door and escaped. She was completely naked, running through a field. She ran for her life. And it's cold. It's April. April evenings in Indiana are chilly. She ran for her life, likely injuring her feet on rocks, thorns, and sticks. It was cold out. She was terrified. She managed to hide in some bushes, and at a certain point, the two men gave up, Donald and Dale, and gave up looking for her and just went home. The victim went to a nearby home and knocked on the door, asking them to call the police. They turned her away. She went to the next house, and they did not let her in, but they did call the police. The local Anderson, Indiana police officers did not believe her story. They doubted that she could get out of the back seat of a two-door car and escape so easily. So, based on that alone, they initially dismissed her claims of stalking, kidnapping, rape, and attempted murder. This is what women who reported rape were up against in 1977 and even today in many places. This victim was battered and naked, running for her life. She was scratched and bruised. She had the name of her attacker and a description of his car, a description of the man who was with him, and still the police doubted her story. What does a rape victim have to look like before you believe her story? Did police really think that a woman would knock on a stranger's door in the cold during the early morning hours, battered and naked, just for fun or for attention? Luckily, the Indiana State Police did believe her, unlike the local Anderson, Indiana police. They put a great deal of effort into the investigation and arrested Donald Forrester and Dale Dawson. Dale was terrified of his cousin, but agreed to testify against him. Dale said this was not the first time the two had abducted and assaulted a woman like this. Together with other witness testimony, Forrester was convicted in November of 1979. He was then sentenced to life in prison. Over the years, Donald Forrester was questioned by investigators about the murder of the 4 Speedway Burger Chef employees. He confessed and recanted multiple times. He was never tried for those crimes. The 4 young people who lost their lives that night were all grieved intensely by their families and the community. This was, of course, big news in Indiana. Just to see these 4 young people with their whole lives ahead of them taken so cruelly, it really devastated a lot of people. It shook a lot of people up. I've talked about the culture of victim blaming in this blog before. Society places different values on people. They shouldn't, but they do. All people deserve the same respect and value. All life is precious. Things like skin color, culture, age, gender, sexual orientation, substance abuse, mental illness, disability, and socioeconomic status should not matter. But people still do place more value on certain victims. A woman showing up battered and naked was not believed. Would a naked boy victim have been believed? What about an old woman? What about a naked and drunk old man? What about a naked young man with Down syndrome? Would they have let a naked little black girl in the house? There shouldn't be a hierarchy in our minds when it comes to empathy for victims. But we humans aren't perfect. We have to really work on overcoming our prejudices. If we are ever going to become a better society, we have to look past stereotypes and stop victim blaming. If we can, there will be enormous benefits in the realm of crime solving. In that totally bizarre constructed hierarchy of victims, the Burger Chef employees were victims that many people immediately felt deep sympathy and kinship with. You could look at their pictures in the newspaper and they looked like people you knew. They were clean-cut kids who were working hard. Hard work is highly valued in the Midwest. This case has so many lessons. Police everywhere should study it carefully. If only the responding officers had not dismissed the situation. Even if you have doubts, treat it like a crime scene. Maybe they thought they were doing these employees a favor by not getting them into legal trouble for taking that money and going out and partying like they thought they did. Even if you have doubts, treat it like a crime scene. Take photos of everything. Document everything. Don't let anyone clean until crime scene investigators do a thorough job. They dismissed the missing crew as just a bunch of irresponsible young people who took the money and went out to party. If you've ever worked at a restaurant, you know that 4 people who've worked a whole shift together aren't going to conspire to steal such a small amount of money and abandon their families, high school, and college ambitions, all for one night of partying. I've worked at places where young employees conspired to steal a little, but it was usually a little bit here and there, and they got caught. Four very different young people aren't going to all decide unanimously to throw their whole lives away for a few $100s. It would be fairly difficult to get four people to agree on pizza toppings. The types of crimes happening in the 1970s taught a great many lessons to investigators and to society as a whole. Crime then was on a whole nother level. I feel sorry, I do, for police officers back then. Crime was absolutely wild, horrific, and happening on a scale that was unprecedented. So many crimes were unlike anything they'd ever seen or could even imagine. If you'd like to hear more about this case, I recommend a podcast called The Murder Sheet. It's available on most major podcast platforms, or just Google it to listen on their site. Their first season is all about the Burger Chef murders. They interviewed investigators, and they went into this case in incredibly great detail. I think about this case a lot. I think about it when fall comes and it's chilly out, and maybe I'm out somewhere and I'm a little bit too cold and I wish I had a warmer jacket. And I think about those girls having to leave their coats behind and their purses, and to be out in that field in Johnson County must have been not only terrifying but cold, and then these men, whoever they were, decided just to kill them all. So that chilly, frosty feeling in the air always kind of makes me think of them. I tracked down where they were found. It's not just empty and rural now. A neighborhood has been built on top of the site. The family that owned the land where the kids were found sold it later to developers, and now there's a neighborhood, a suburban type neighborhood, built on the land that the kids were found in. They were found in a field that's sort of surrounded by trees. It's not really easy to find, and I almost feel like that the person who decided to go there with these four, whoever decided to take that route south out of Speedway and out of Indianapolis and then down into Johnson County, I feel like they had to know that field was there. And strangely enough, just not very far away is the homeowner's house. So they weren't exactly in a terribly secluded area with gunshots going off and things. It's kind of amazing that they didn't wake up the homeowner and get spotted as they were leaving. The murders of Jayne Friedt, Daniel Davis, Mark Flemmonds, and Ruth Ann Shelton are still unsolved. Every murder victim deserves justice. And there's always hope that a case can be solved. Maybe there's somebody out there right now who knows something. Maybe they've kept quiet out of loyalty, or they kept quiet out of fear. But maybe one day they'll decide that they don't feel loyal anymore and they're not scared of that person anymore. If you have a tip about this case, please contact the Indiana State Police at 317-899-8577 or 1-800-852-8400. Rest in peace, Jayne, Daniel, Mark, and Ruth Ann.